Ladies and gentlemen, if the Bible is an instruction manual for how to live your life, then the Federalist Papers are an instruction manual for the U.S. Constitution. Same concept. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm James Lane, and in this segment, we're going to go through Federalist Paper number 68. We're going to take the sections, we're going to translate them into plain English, and I'm going to show you just how Trump may be looking for a pathway not only to victory, but to a much more peaceful transition than we're expecting, folks. So stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, James Lane here, and welcome to American Revelry's Casual Saturday. I'm going to detail Federalist Paper number 68 today. It's not a very long read. I'm going to read through it, and each section I'm going to break down for you as best I can. I'm not perfect, but I'll do the best I can. I did put out a statement. I do apologize for the error I made on my previous video where I accidentally swapped Haspel and Ray, and I said that the CIA director was somebody who wasn't the FBI director, was somebody. Well, anyway, I accidentally screwed it up. I don't have a script, so sometimes you slip up. It happens. So I do apologize for that, and I'll do my best to pay more attention. So now that that's done and over with, we're not talking about it anymore. We're not detailing it because I'm not losing any more sleep over it. All right. So we need to go through this, and I really have to get this point across to you. It's very important to know that these Federalist Papers were written by Alexander Hamilton, by a few other. They went under a pen name, Publius, all right? And they used these papers to way before social media, obviously. They published them in newspapers, and they used it to sell the idea of the Constitution, the importance of the Constitution, the ratification of the Constitution to the American people. So these weren't written like observations of what may be this or that. These were written by the folks that actually had their hand in the making of the Constitution. They understood why these checks and balances were in place and what these rules and these things meant to do. And they're meant to root out corruption. They're meant to find the most peaceful way through transitions of power. They're meant to dissuade dictatorships and put off mutinies. I mean, it's all kinds of crazy pants, the level of foresight that our founding fathers had. So without further ado, let's start reading through this, and as you see, and as we go through, I'll make my points, and then at the end, we'll tie it together, and then you can make a decision from there, ladies and gentlemen. So let's start. Federalist Paper number 68, New York, March 12th, 1778. Oh, look, threat detected. I get, attacked 17 times a day by hackers trying to break into my computer here. All right, let's start, guys. See that? Multiple threats. Oh, they're trying to hack me, ladies and gentlemen. You saw that live, right? You saw all of those things pop up. Yeah, that's people on the left do this. I get some death threats sometimes, but I also get people trying to literally break into the computer here and shut down what I'm doing. That's why you get multiple threats detected. Anyway, now that it seems to have calmed down, I apologize. That wasn't an intentional segue. To the people of the state of New York, the mode of appointment of the Chief Magistrate of the United States is almost the only part of the system of any consequence which has escaped without severe censure, or which has received the slightest mark of approbation from its opponents. The most plausible of these, who has appeared in print, has even deigned to admit that the election of the president is pretty well guarded. I venture somewhat further and hesitate not to affirm that if the manner of it be not perfect, it is at least excellent. It unites in an eminent degree all the advantages, the union of which was to be desired. What he's basically saying there in that little opening statement, that opening paragraph, is that he's kind of tooting the horn of what was created, of how they've decided to choose the president. And you know, it's kind of like I would dare say, a little bit of a cocky statement there, because it's him kind of saying, hey, this system is great. Nobody even when people have doubts about parts of it, they're not very big. And it seems to be time to, I mean, we've gone through all of these centuries to prove that that statement's correct. We've gone through, 2 centuries. We've gone through countless decades. We've gone through a lot of time to prove this right, ladies and gentlemen. So, I mean, at this point, we can say they kind of had the right to be a little cocky in that first paragraph there, because the foresight of our founders was just out of this world. It was amazing that people in their 20s, think about people in their 20s these days, guys. Think about when you were in your 20s. Could you have helped write the Constitution? I mean, I digress. Let's read. It was desirable that the sense of the people should operate in the choice of the person to whom so important a trust was to be confided. They're saying it's important that the people should have a say somehow in how the president's elected. This is a person who they're supposed to cede power to, who they're supposed to trust. So they should have a hand in it. So how will they have a hand in it? This end will be answered by committing the right of making it not to any pre-established body, but to men chosen by the people for the special purpose at the particular conjuncture. And what they're talking about there is the electors that'll be chosen and set to vote. And those electors, based upon which way the popular vote went in the state, blue or red, the electors are a established body. Not established, but they're a body of individuals that are chosen from that particular party. You see where I'm trying to go with? The electors could vote either way. But if the popular vote went to a Democrat, the stash of Democrat electors are going to be the ones voting in that state for the president. You see where I'm coming from? So we already know that they're going to be voting Democrat because they're the Democrat electors. But it is chosen by the people, as long as you're not using a Dominion machine, of course. So when they say the special purpose at the particular conjuncture, all they're talking about is at a certain place and a certain time, the electors will get together and vote. That's all they're saying. It was equally desirable that the immediate election should be made by men most capable of analyzing the qualities adapted to the station and acting under circumstances favorable to the deliberation and to a judicious combination of all the reasons and inducements which were proper to govern their choice. A small number of persons selected by their fellow citizens from the general mass will be most likely to possess the information and discernment requisite to so complicated an investigation. So the people they want voting for the president in the Electoral College, what they're talking about here is they want people that are capable of analyzing the qualities of the president and what they would need in their states, in their place. And what they're trying to say here, when it talks about a small number of persons selected by their fellow citizens, what they're trying to say is the best people for the job, for their location, are going to be the people that live in that area, that work in that area, that conduct themselves in that area. So a body of people, an electoral, chosen by the people. So you have the legislature getting their electors in, through that process, and you have the electors being upon party lines, obviously, but those party line electors are only getting to actually vote for the president if that state, based on that popular vote, votes red or blue. So if Texas is red, then the Republican electors are going to vote, and those are people chosen amongst the citizenry of their state. That's basically all it's saying. It's very, very fancy words for our times, ladies and gentlemen. So when I'm explaining it, it doesn't sound very magnificent or anything, but that's basically what it's saying. Let's keep going. It was also peculiarly, I always mess that word up, peculiarly, whatever, desirable to afford as little opportunity as possible to tumult and disorder. Okay, so here's where it starts getting interesting. When they're crafting this, they're trying to find a way to do this so people aren't killing each other in the streets. It's 1788, okay? They want to elect a president, and they don't want it to feel like a king. They don't want it to feel like people should be together from all different parts of the country in one room screaming, California this, Wisconsin that, Delaware, They don't want that crap. They know it doesn't work well. So they're looking to create something, and they have created something that is going to not necessarily get rid of the possibility of a problem, but drastically reduce that. Okay. And that's what it says right there. When they talk about having as little tumult and disorder as possible. Look, this evil was not least to be dreaded in the election of a magistrate who was to have so important an agency, a job, in the administration of government as the President of the United States. They don't want problems when you're selecting the most important job in our country. That's what they're saying. But the precautions which have been so happily concerted in the system under consideration promise an effectual security against mischief. All right. So they're saying that the way that we choose the president has its own problem solving. Hit the mic there. Sorry. Has its own problem solving capabilities built in. It's like a built-in corruption fighter. All right. And we're going to read about that. Where were we? The choice of several to form an intermediate body of electors will be much less apt to convulse the community. All right. So if the electors are chosen in each state and the state itself is voting from that, you're going to have much less of a problem. All right. Remember back then, there's a lot less states as well. So it states here, I said states like 4 times, excuse me. With any extra... The choice of several to form an intermediate body of electors will be much less apt to convulse the community, all right? To upend, to upset the community, to have them marching in the street with torches. With any extraordinary or violent movements, you see right there, than the choice of one who was himself to be the final object of the public wishes. And as the electors chosen in each state are to assemble and vote in the state in which they are chosen, just like I said, they're not going to get together in one space and have fistfights. This detached and divided situation will expose them much less to heats and ferments, which might be communicated from them to the people than if they were all to be convened at one time in one place. So I've said it a few times. This entire paragraph here is really saying we have to basically split the states, have all the states doing their own type of voting, their own way to vote, their own thing where they have to eventually certify their results and just get it to us so that they're all not together in the same room and beating the crap out of each other. That's not the whole gist of this paper. That's just the gist of this paragraph. All right. People used to shoot each other back in the day, like right there. Like, hey, man, I don't like you. Hey, dude, I don't like you either. Your wig is really crappy. Well, your wig is really stupid. Cool, let's go out in the street. And they'd literally shoot each other. And people, I mean, they didn't have cable TV, guys. That was their entertainment. So you got to put a paragraph in there to make sure people aren't beating the crap out of each other. Anyway, I hope that was a good way for you to remember it, too. Nothing was more to be desired than that every practicable obstacle should be opposed to cabal, to intrigue, to corruption. So every way that this has been designed, it needs to have its own way to fight cabal, to fight intrigue, to fight corruption, to fight the bad stuff, ladies and gentlemen. These most deadly adversaries of Republican government, remember, we're a republic, we're not a democracy, might naturally have been expected to make their approaches from more than one quarter, but chiefly from the desire in foreign powers to gain an improper ascendant in our councils. I want to remind you that breaking today, Sidney Powell is talking about them finding ballot printing operations from China. I believe Iran was included, but mainly China in a couple key states here. We're probably going to do a video on that coming up in a little bit, but some stuff is going down. There was a whistleblower from China that actually revealed all kinds of pictures. Just start looking it up. Google it or DuckDuckGo it, actually. I'm trying to get away from Google, but some crazy stuff's going on today. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's keep going. How could they better gratify this than by raising a creature of their own to the chief magistrate of the union, or maybe a creature like Joe Biden, who's bought, who's owned by a foreign power, ladies and gentlemen. That's what it's talking about. It's talking about there are safeguards that are put in place to prevent something like that from happening. But the convention have guarded against all danger of this sort with the most provident and judicious attention. They've not made the appointment of the president to depend on any pre-existing bodies of men who might be tampered with beforehand to prostitute their votes. This is very important, guys. I'm going to explain it in a second. But they have referred it in the first instance to an immediate act of the people of America to be exerted in the choice of persons for temporary and sole purpose of making the appointment. They're talking about the electors not being able to be corrupted because they're chosen during every election. But to me, this goes deeper. What they're talking about is foreign interference, which we're seeing in our government. We're seeing right now, today, we've had breaking news come out that they're starting to reveal that there may be printing farms in this country where China's been printing ballots and getting them to, I mean, stuff has been coming out today, and I'm going to try to report more on it later. I don't want to go too far off subject, but the whole purpose that 68 is telling us, the whole purpose of developing the process, the biggest thing they took into consideration when they developed the process of selecting our president was, how do we do this while keeping foreign invaders from corrupting our election? And what you're seeing right now is an election where foreign invaders have corrupted it with the help of corrupted inside, I would call them terrorists at this point, treasonous individuals working inside our government, elected officials that are bought and sold by China. We're seeing an attempt on our government. We're seeing that coup, but we have safeguards in place. We have things that this is going to explain. We have the electors. We have reasons that can be used in court. Hear me when I say this, written into this, to prevent the production, the corruption, to fight it off, to win in the courts. We are not losing in these court battles, folks, because what's happening is unconstitutional. All right, so let's get back to this. But let's see, how could they better gratify this than by raising a creature of their own to the chief magistrate of the union? But the convention have guarded, okay, sorry about that, guys. They have not made the appointment of the president to depend on any pre-existing bodies of men. We said that. That's basically talking about the Electoral College. But they have referred to it in the first instance to an immediate act of the people. So what that is saying is, they want it to be in the moment. This is the people right now. This is what the people's will reflects in this snapshot. That's what's happening. And that's how you prevent long-term corruption. The problem is you've got some players at the highest level here that have been corrupted for a very long time, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So, and they have excluded from eligibility to this trust all those who from situation might be suspected of too great devotion to the president in office. No senator or representative or other person holding a place of office, no trust or profit under the United States can be of the electors. So what's that saying? What that's saying, ladies and gentlemen, is if you're currently holding elected office, you cannot be an official in the election. You can't be an elector, excuse me. So without corrupting the body of the people, the immediate agents in the election will at least enter upon the task free from any sinister bias. What they're trying to do right there, again, is to prevent them from coming in with an agenda. And that's what we're trying to find right now with all of these different corruption charges, whether people that were putting these people in place. Remember, they're saying election official fraud, the people that are putting the electors in place. Not necessarily all election officials, but election officials and elected representatives are putting these people in place. And are they corrupted in their choice? Are they corrupted in their character, in their nature? That's what we're trying to weed out, folks. So thus, without corrupting the body of the people, the immediate agents in the election will at least enter upon the task free from any sinister bias. We just said that. Their transient existence and their detached situation already taken notice of afford a satisfactory prospect of their continuing so to the conclusion of it. The business of corruption, when it is to embrace so considerable a number of men, requires time as well as means. Think about that. Think about what the founders were saying. Think about what Alexander Hamilton is saying in that statement. When he says that real deep corruption takes time, it takes means, it takes planning. And the corruption they're trying to avoid by placing an immediate body of electors to be put in place for a temporary duty. But like we just mentioned before, if the legislature and the election officials are corrupted, then that can corrupt this process, ladies and gentlemen. And it can be done over a long period of time where the means and the time are there to be found and taken advantage of. So let's keep reading. Nor would it be found easy suddenly to embark them, dispersed as they would be over 13 states in any combinations founded upon motives which, though they could not properly be denominated corrupt, might yet be of nature to mislead them from their duty. Now, there's an important point to be made in that statement that relates where they talk about the 13 states, ladies and gentlemen, and we now have 50 plus states. We don't have 13 states, and we have social media, and we have the internet, ladies and gentlemen. So the time that it would take to spread something, to spread the message, has been drastically reduced. Look, right here, right now, at the American Reveille, we're shooting up to 12,000 people almost now on Parler, and everything's getting thousands of views. Our podcast's getting thousands of listens. We greatly appreciate it. But if this was 1788 and this was a news publication, this would have been a hell of a lot slower. You have to know that. So we know we're in a dilemma right now where information is spreading so quick that it's almost moving like a virus would move. And think about it, they even call it going viral when something explodes across the internet. So these things that were taken into consideration once upon a time could possibly get corrupted slightly these days because the use of the internet, having the MSM on their side, having the big tech companies that control the social media, helping somebody could definitely corrupt this institution. So that's something that needs to be investigated. That's something that we're trying to uncover at the moment, and in a lot of ways have uncovered it, folks. So let's keep going through the next paragraph. Another and no less important desideratum. Desideratum. I forgot that word was in here, folks. So really quick, so that we're not all scratching our heads, let's look that up. I'm going to be fair to you guys. Be honest here. Desideratum is something desired as essential. How to use desideratum. There we go. Desideratum in a sentence. All right. So it means something that we need as essential. So another no less important, we could have wrote essential item, but it's 1788. So we're going to say desideratum was, and that's a fun word, by the way, that the executive should be independent for his continuance in office on all but the people themselves. All right. The executive should be independent for his continuance in office on all but the people himself. So if the sitting president is trying to get reelected, he is reelected on the will of the people, not on anyone. This is talking about government being corrupt in favor of a president, which is something that the left has accused for a very long time. And this is explaining how they got around that, how they made it so it couldn't be possible within our government for a sitting president to be that type of corrupt. He might otherwise be tempted to sacrifice his duty to his complacence for those whose favor was necessary to the duration of his official consequence. What that's saying? I'm sorry for twisting my words up a little. This is all 1788 speak here. But this is basically saying that they're putting things in place so the president can't be bought. All right. The executive needs to be independent if he wants to stay in office. All right. Look at Trump. He is not the big tech, the big business guy. He is based upon us. We're helping Trump's reelection. Nobody else It's the people for Trump. Look at that right there. This is going absolutely according to what our founders said it should go. Okay? This is where the signs are. The executive should be independent for his continuance in office. The people, it's on the people themselves. If not, he might be tempted to sacrifice his duty to the Constitution, his duty to the people, to his complacency, to his necessity to please a certain group of people who he would need to be reelected. So if the election was being tampered by, say, certain groups, you would see evidence of him trying to please those groups. And you know where you see evidence of that? You see that from Joe Biden. You see him pleasing China. You see him pleasing big tech. You see him paying off Smartmatic and Dominion. That is what they're fighting against. That's why President Trump can't be doing any of that, because we have these things in place. Our system is built for that. I'm trying to show these points to you. I know this has been a dry thing, and some of you are going to like it because I know some of you don't like when I talk and make it interesting. So this will be for the other side, I guess. But I'm trying to put these points across to show you exactly how and why Trump is on a path to victory and how he might be able to safely do it for the most part. So, and this is very important to know anyway, because you're going to get into little stiffles with lefties, and these lefties don't live in facts and reality. So if you actually know what something from a Federalist paper says, it arms you as a patriot. It arms you with some kind of weapon used for the First Amendment. You have a vocal weapon, a memorized weapon, a virtual tool to combat the insanity of the left with by going through this. So bear with me. We're going to get to the end of it. We're going to get to a great point. And we're going to understand exactly how this safeguards against corruption once we get through this. So this advantage will also be secured by making his reelection to depend on a special body of representatives deputed by the society for the single purpose of making the choice. So that goes back to the electors chosen by the people through the legislature. All these advantages will be happily combined in the plan devised by the convention, which is that the people of each state shall choose a number of persons as electors equal to the number of senators and representatives of such state in the national government. You're learning right now. A lot of you don't know this, all right? A lot of us didn't know this. I didn't know this a while back. Look, if the state has 38 electors, that means that a combination of senators and congressmen in that state equal to the number 38. That's basically what that is saying. Let's see. Who shall assemble within the state and vote for some fit person as president. There's some words right there for court. A fit person, which we know Joe Biden is not. Their votes, thus given, are to be transmitted to the seat of the national government, and the person who may happen to have a majority of the whole number of votes will be president. But as a majority of the votes might not happen to center on always one man, and as it might be unsafe to permit less than a majority to be conclusive, it is provided that in such a contingency, the House of Representatives shall select out of the candidates who shall have the 5 highest number of votes, the man who, in their opinion, may be best qualified for office. So that's explaining right there what could happen. All right, that's one paragraph right there that's super duper important. It tells you first how they get the electors. So I can't remember off the top of my head, but California has a crap ton of electors. It's like 80, 90, 100. It's some big, huge number. Might be less than that. I might be way off, but it's a big, huge number. And that's because California's big and it has a ton of senators and it has a ton of congressmen and congresswomen. All right. And so the number of that plus the senators equals the amount of electors. Those electors are chosen by the people. And if the state votes blue or the state votes red, then you get the red electors or the blue electors. All right. It's done by the legislature. But they recognize here, all right, that sometimes there's a problem, right? They recognize that the majority of the votes might not always fall upon somebody, upon one person, that the state might not always agree on who should be elected, whether it's corruption or whether it's party division, whatever it may be. But if the state is deemed invalid and cannot certify, then it goes to the House of Representatives to be voted on. All right. And they're going to select out of the candidates who shall have the 5 highest number of votes. All right. And then that person will be the person they choose for office. All right. We don't want that pathway. All right. We want a different pathway. We want the electoral pathway. All right. And I think that's what Trump is going for, to avoid violence as much as possible. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. I just want to get through the rest of this. And we're almost done, guys. It's not very long. This process of election affords a moral certainty that the office of president will seldom fall to the lot of any man who is not in an eminent degree endowed with the requisite qualifications. What they're saying is that once in a while, the presidency might go to an idiot. All right. But this is going to make sure that it does not happen very often whatsoever, and that it calls out an idiot if they're going for it. You can tell who an idiot is, because the process is going to be all crazy if an idiot supposedly won. At least that's how I see it. That's how I read into it a little further. And a lot of people, you have to read into these a little bit because they're written in 1788. And so there are many different experts with many different opinions. And based upon what we're going through at the time right now, that's what I feel about that right there. All right. Talents for low intrigue and the little arts of popularity may alone suffice to elevate a man to the first honors in a single state. That's Joe Biden, all right? Somebody who's not popular, somebody who does not have a talent for intrigue, for the business, for doing the job of the people, all right? Somebody who does not know how to get the people's ear, Joe Biden, all right? They might win some states, but it's going to require other talents and a different kind of merit to establish him in the esteem and confidence of the entire union, or of so considerable a portion of it as would be necessary to make him the successful candidate for the distinguished office of President of the United States. What that is saying is that there are a million safeguards in place to prevent somebody like Joe Biden getting elected president. And one of those, and a big chunk of those, is the states not certifying, or the states having to change or not agree. So that would then go to House delegation, and then we win. That's just how that works. We win because we have more House delegations, ladies and gentlemen. That's just what it is. Folks, it's very important to understand that it seems like what's happening right now is impossible. But it only seems impossible because it's so rare that nobody alive today has experienced it, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing compares to it. So you have to understand that it's entirely possible that what we all think is about to happen is happening. And the evidence is here. And we can even see evidence of it in historical documents, like Federalist paper number 68. Look, we have to get through and explain just a couple more things, ladies and gentlemen. It will not be too strong to say that there will be a constant probability. And what they're talking about is through the design of the structure of how we choose our president, of what they've created. It will not be too strong. It's not crazy for them to say that they've created a system where they're going to have a constant flow, a constant probability of seeing the job, the station, filled by characters, by people preeminent for the ability and virtue for the job. They're qualified, they're skilled, they're talented for the position of president of the U.S. And this estimate and this will be thought no inconsiderable recommendation of the Constitution by those who are able to estimate the share which the executive in every government must necessarily have in its good or ill administration, though we cannot acquiesce in the political heresy of the poet who says, "For forms of government let fools contest, for that which is best administered is best. Yet, we may safely pronounce that the true test of a good government is its aptitude and tendency to produce a good administration. You know, folks, I'm super smart. I'd like to think that at least, but I'm not smart enough to guess the best explanation for that poem because a lot of people have a lot of different explanations for it. But I like the quote right below it, where he says, yet we may safely pronounce that the true test of a good government is its aptitude and tendency to produce a good administration. All right. So this whole process is meant to put somebody in place with the talents needed to build a administration, a leadership team, a business, possibly an executive branch. You know, you have executives at companies, right? You know, there's somebody we know that might run companies, right? You know, there's somebody we know that has experience with executives, right? That sounds like Donald Trump to me. Anyway, the vice president, let's do this for a second, then we're going to make a point at the end here. The vice president, all right, is to be chosen in the same manner with the president, with this difference that the Senate is to do in respect to the former, what is to be done by the House of Representatives in respect to the latter. Now, a lot of people don't realize there's actually electors that vote on the vice president. Yep, it's a thing. It's I know I just blew some people's minds right now, but the vice president, even though he's selected by the president, they get voted on too. They do. They're not just riding on the coattails of the president of the United States. The appointment of an extraordinary person as vice president has been objected to as superfluous, yes, I said it correctly, if not mischievous. It has been alleged that it would have been preferable to have authorized the Senate to elect out of their own body an officer answering that description, but two considerations seem to justify the idea of the convention in this respect. One is that to secure at all times the possibility of a definitive resolution of the body, it is necessary that the president should have only a casting vote, all right? So the vice president, who is the president of the Senate, should have one vote, all right? And to take a senator out of a state from his seat and place him as the president of the Senate would be to exchange, in regard to the state from which he came, a constant for a contingent vote. The other consideration is that as the vice president may occasionally become a substitute for the president, it is in the Supreme Executive Magistracy, or what's that say? Magistracy. Magistracy. Yeah, hey, it says magistracy. All the reasons which recommend the mode of election prescribed for one apply with great, if not with equal force, to the manner of appointing the other. It is remarkable that in this, as in most other instances, the objection which is made would be against the Constitution of the state. We have a lieutenant governor chosen by the people at large who presides in the Senate and is the constitutional substitute for the governor in casualties similar to those, which would authorize the vice president to exercise the authorities and discharge the duties as president. This is signed by Publius, or Publius, however, people have a different saying for either way. Anyway, guys, what they're trying to say here about the vice president is that they need it to be a separate entity that can separate his vote from the Senate itself. That's why the vice president has the tie-breaking vote, right? He's the president of the Senate, but the senators kind of do their own thing. What I'm getting at, though, from this whole thing, I wanted to go through it because it is good for you. You need the knowledge. It is dry. It's hard for some people to get through. I know that a lot of people love to hear my voice and a lot of people hate to hear my voice. I have that kind of love me, hate me personality, folks. But at the end of the day, if you can get through this, and some of my videos are going to be awesome, some of them aren't going to be so great. It's like playing the game Battleship, folks. I got to strive for perfection, but nobody is perfect. There's only one perfection in the universe. So we went through it. You're going to get something good out of it because you're going to be armed with the knowledge, with the tools to fight the left with your mouth, not necessarily with your fists or with your other things, because we are not at that point, and hopefully we won't get to that point. But by using our First Amendments and doing it knowledgeably, doing it wisely, by using our First Amendment rights to combat the left with facts, we are taking the moral high ground. We are doing the right thing. We are waking more people up. We're showing more people the way to the correct thought process in this, because what's happening is ridiculous. We can all agree on that. But the real thing that I want to get to, it was very important when we went through here and we talked about why they put this together. It's to avoid conflict. All right. We know that if this goes to House delegations, there's going to probably be huge conflict. And we know through the electoral process, there's going to be huge conflict. But the electoral process was created to quell conflict. You see where I'm coming from? So, especially with the past videos I've done, with a lot of the research I've been doing, with the reading that I've been doing, and with what we've all been seeing, I think Trump's first and foremost goal is to work very, very diligently, and I believe he has a very good chance of doing this, at reversing the electoral decisions in many of these states. All right. A lot of them made their decisions already, but it was because that's what they were supposed to do. That's kind of their thing. Now, there were other places where governors were acting in very awkward, almost corrupt actions, where Kemp was certifying, where Ducey is certifying. I mean, things in states with massive fraud, massive. I mean, look at the videos we've seen in Georgia of the suitcases. Look at all the news coming out. I mean, it's tremendous. Things shouldn't be certified. But by putting these up to the courts don't have to send it to the House delegations. That's what I'm saying. Everybody's saying House of Representatives. And yes, it could end up there, but the courts don't have to send it there. All they have to do is state at the highest level, the highest court, the Amy Coney Barrett court, where we talked about how the left called the narrative already, where they said she was going to get put in there and help Trump in his coup, because they're trying to get people prepared for Trump's win and somehow not collapse upon themselves. They already called that, folks. So when it goes to that court, the highest court in the land, where they rule upon constitutional matters, they may just rule, and they most likely will rule, because everything I'm seeing is unconstitutional, and the lawsuits that have been filed are based upon Constitution and the rights of the Constitution, the rights of the people. All they have to do is just rule a certain number of votes constitutional, and floop, states just start flipping. You'll see, Arizona or Georgia flip. All of a sudden, it's Trump. And then the left's going to go, what's happening? It's a coup. And then another's going to flip. And they're going to freak out, coup, oh my God. And then all of a sudden, we're going to have a Trump landslide. If Trump does it that way, if that's the way we go, which I believe it's probably the harder of the two, the harder of the paths, and there's more than two, but the harder of the ones we're talking about. But if he can pull that off, and it seems he's a master at pulling off the least likely scenario, if he pulls that off, you're going to avoid a ton of the violence, because you're going to have the will of the states over the will of the federal government, because the states, the federal government will choose the court, but the state will have to recertify. You see where I'm coming from? It'll be the will of that state. It'll be explained in more detail, will have to be investigated. I mean, it'll lead to so many more things where the truth will be able to come out. People will have to be held accountable. You see where I'm coming from? Either way, I believe truly in my heart that certifying that way, by flipping the states back to Trump, by giving him his legitimate landslide, I believe that's going to lead to a much more peaceful outcome. Now, will there still be violence? Sure. I expect it. I expect there to be something crazy coming. But like we said in the previous videos, I believe that Trump hasn't used the Insurrection Act because he's saving it for the worst case scenario. God forbid they do freak out and millions of people are being violent in the streets. We're going to have no choice but to use the Insurrection Act, not to necessarily shoot people. God forbid. I don't want our military using any force like that against our own people. But the military can use non-lethal weapons. Their hands aren't tied behind their back like the police. They can use gas. They can push people off. They can arrest people. They can detain people, and they're not under control by weak Democrat governors. So I think I've talked your ear off long enough. I know I went on a couple little tangents. I tried to do this episode with much more detail, tailored down a little bit more. I know it wasn't perfect. I know there's going to be some mistakes in there. Again, I'm practicing non-scripted. I'm really trying to get good on the fly here and just reading and reviewing a few times and then going. So this is only like the 5th or 6th video I've done that. So please forgive me. I do this constantly. I'm a hard worker. I'm a veteran, guys. I'm going to keep pushing, keep practicing. And I promise you, just stick with me and I'm going to get better and better for you guys. And the American Reveille is just going to keep growing and getting bigger. Eventually, I'd like us to host multiple podcasts, to host dozens of writers. I have a very big vision for the company American Reveille, not just the podcast, the American Reveille podcast, or the American Reveille movement, where I want us to be able to actually help people, where I want to be able to help small business and do things for people in this country. So, folks, with that, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, do me a favor. I need a 5-star rating from you. And if you've got the time, please give me a review on there. Write one out. If you rate me, we go up the rankings and more patriots get to see what we're doing. Other than that, if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble, please do me a favor. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. This channel's only going to get better and better, and we're going to be bringing on more people, more talent, more things to get the truth out. We are growing. Follow me on Parler, guys. Be one of the 12,000 people almost following me there, where we are spreading the truth on a daily basis and putting our wit and our twist, not our twist on the truth, but the way we deliver the message so that you actually have something to think about. You know, there's a lot of folks out there, gold badges, blue check marks, that just retweet, re-echo, put stuff out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if it's everything you do and it has no personality, how do you expect people to want to come back? So I try to put a little personality in what we do so that we can build that relationship, you and I. All right, folks. So thank you so much. And if you really want to help, head over to AmericanReveille.com. You can do it just like this. AmericanReveille.com. You'll see my pretty face pop up right here in the middle, and go right over here to the donate tab, and you can just click that button. And even if you donate $1, it's going to go towards upgrading the equipment. And I mean, the computers are starting to crap out. We don't make any profit at this point. So if you'd like to help, we greatly appreciate it. But remember, it's absolutely unnecessary. Just share, just follow along on Parler at The James Lane, and get the word out about the American Reveille message. Guys, thank you so much, and I'll see you later in our next video. Bye. Oh, good. I am glad you're still here, comrade. I need you to do me big favor. I need you to go and hit this like button right here. I need you to hit this share button right here. And most important of all, I need you to come up here and hit the subscribe button. Yes, you have to hit the subscribe button and subscribe to American Reveille YouTube channel. Good. And then, comrade, when you're done, go up to the Parler. All right, I need you to find the Parler. Go into your App Store, your Google Play Store, and find Parler. Parler. Okay, Parler. And when you get on the Parler, either in the app or www.parler.com, you come and find at The James Lane. The James Lane, the owner and the president of the American Reveille. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, thank you this so much, and I look forward to building gigantic, united, right-wing community with you.